It is the fourth and final sister of the four elementals to receive her upgrade, with newly acquired skills, bulk, and ready to charge back into battle as the shield of the quartet. It is GNM01, Earth Gnome, with a kit of Minus Guard, Charge Guard, Zettai Guard, Tank Legs, and the leg ability of Hoplite, which buffs the leg's resist stats for every defense part equipped on the build. Now, I have to be honest, it has been a pretty hot minute since we've seen the elementals get any attention, since we did get Wind Sylph, Flame Vulcan, and Aqua Nereid fairly close to each other when they were all released, and for the longest time a lot of us were kind of wondering, when is Earth Chrono getting her upgrade? Well, that wait is finally over, and with that comes a very solid and extremely bulky defense-based kit, which takes arguably the least used sister of the bunch and turns it around into a very imposing shield-like wall that imposes that while she's on the field, no one is getting hurt. Minus Guard on the head part is a defense skill that, while Earth Gnome is centered on the line, will intercept all incoming attacks and minimize the damage relative to her damage reduction. However, Minus Guard has a rather interesting kick to it, in the sense that if the enemy tries to attack Earth Gnome with a negative ailment type of attack, this includes anything such as fire, melt, deathlock, freeze, thunder, anything that applies a negative symptom to the target normally. Minus Guard instead will nullify the attack and turn the ailment back to sender. So if you are planning to try to use Deathlock to cancel a guard effect and prevent Earth Gnome from being able to do so, well, guess what? She's not going to be the one afflicted with the Deathlock. You are, actually, and then you have to put up with it over the entirety of the fight or its duration. Charge Guard on the right arm is another defense skill that has another very unique element to it, and it's the fact that its damage reduction scales with the amount of charge in Earth Gnome gauge. So this means that the higher the charge that she has while guarding, the bulkier she gets and the more damage she's able to reduce when taking those incoming hits. And that's not even touching on her rather obscene bulk before everything else comes into play, but I will get to that later. Zettai Guard on the left arm, and arguably the most potent of all of the defense skills that Earth Gnome is bringing to the table, is considered and translated as the Absolute Guard. Essentially, where Minus Guard and Charge Guard will essentially nullify or reduce damage relative to certain conditions, Zettai Guard will nullify basically everything except basic damage. That includes ailments of any design or type, much like Minus Guard, so Deathlock, Freeze, Thunder, Fire, Melt, Wave, anything that's a negative ailment is nullified. This also includes any damage modifiers, so this means if they try to use a charge reliant such as Beam Sword or Ghost Shot, and they have a full gauge, well, guess what? They're not getting that damage bonus when they are attacking you with Zettai Guard. Instead, they'll be only eating the basic incoming damage that comes from being able to attack without any modifiers present. That also includes any scatter effects, scatter, AoE, or pierce effects. It is just the basic non-special damage. In fact, it would actually be easier to say that attacking something with Zettai Guard would essentially be the equivalent of trying to shoot them with a pea shooter, or in Medarot S's case, a under 5-star capped rifle or sword attack. So really nothing there to mention, and while Earth Gnome is on the line, she's going to be tanking everything and keeping that damage as low as she can possibly. And when it comes to that bulk, boy is she packing, with a very impressive armor across the board, as you'd expect of a lot of shielder types like her. A head HP of 4379, a right arm of just under 5400, a left arm at just under 5100, and legs also at just under 5100. Earth Gnome is fairly bulky, which is to be expected, like I said, for a shielder paladin like herself. However, that is not where Earth Gnome's bulk ends. Looking at her leg stat, she is packing a base mobility of 620, which for tank legs is actually not bad. Tank legs tend to typically sit between roughly about 400 or 500 mobility at best, and that is not including any special cases or boss types that were allowed to be given some higher than average specs. So being in the low 600s is actually still not too shabby. Now, of course, as a tank leg, that does mean that she has the complete inability to dodge or graze incoming attacks. But in trade, tank legs also gets a free stacking 30% damage reduction that goes alongside anything else that she's packing while she's on the field. So this means that if she wasn't bulky before, she's just getting started. Now, when it comes to a resist stat, she's packing a solid 1744 in both her melee and her shooting resist, so already fairly solid bulk on her own, but she is still not done yet. Adding Hoplite into the mix, which buffs her resist stats for every defense part equipped, means that a triple defense type like her means that she is going to be absolutely packing on the weight, the bulk, and the shields necessary to guarantee that any hit that lands is going to be nothing more than a love tap by the time she's finished intercepting that blow. However, this being said, though, there are still a number of rather noticeable weaknesses with what Earth Gnome brings to the table, but despite those, however, as a pure set, I still have to grade her a fairly synergetic 7 out of 10, primarily for the case that all three of her guards, minus guard having a heating of just over 800, charge and Zettai guard being in the low 700s, and all of them having heating in the mid 600s or even low 700s, means that even if she isn't packing the speed, she can still dash back and forth fairly solidly as long as something's able to kind of help build her up into that and give her time to get to the line. But once she's on the line, she's not moving. However, it is also worth noting there are a couple of very big glaring weaknesses that Earth Gnome brings to the table that, unfortunately, she could not overcome with the upgraded form coming from Earth Chrono, and that is the fact that she also is packing basic shields as a non-meta change unit. So this means that anyone that is packing Destroy or any of its varieties in the incoming lineup is most likely able to crunch her sooner than later. As mixed parts, though, I do have to rate her just a little bit higher at an 8 out of 10. Given that minus guard and charge guard are fairly weird in how you choose to use them, Zettai guard is extremely user-friendly in what it brings to the table, even if you only are allowed 3 charges with it. And fairly solid tank leg with good bulk, decent speed, and a leg ability that emphasizes packing on as much weight and defense as possible means that you can make a lot of very extremely synergetic builds that even could trade off for a little bit more speed, such as, say, Charles de Nurse or even Saint Nurse with perfect guard heads, or Snake Queen, which has it on an arm. So you could mix up those parts to trade off for just a little bit more speed or something a little more user-friendly in some cases and more synergetic, and still make the most of all the bulk that Earth Gnome is bringing to the table.